Yo, so today I'm going to be breaking down an aggressive, fast hyperpop loop, kind of like a whole lot of red style kind of thing, and then throwing some drums on it. So the majority of these sounds are from Sunboy's new one-shot kit called Psycho, and it's really good for like Ken Carson, Playboi Carti kind of melodies. So if you're interested, I'll leave a link in the top of the description. Alright, so for the first sound from that kit, I used this lead called Uno the Activist for like the main synth sound of the melody. And here's the MIDI for it, and overall I kind of use the same process that I've explained before in videos, but I'll go ahead and explain it again really quick. So basically the notes that are next to each other in the scale usually give off a more dark feel. So what I do to get these kind of like dark, like distorted-ish chords is I'll go from the root note, which in my case is D sharp, build a normal chord, go ahead and delete the top note, move this up. So if we listen to this, it's kind of like full sounding, like you can make a normal hyperpop melody out of it, but you want it to sound dark and distorted. So go ahead and push it down one to F, which is still in the scale, but it'll just make it sound a little bit more dark and distorted. So it gets that kind of like whole lot of red aggressive feeling. And then I just went ahead and added the bass note up 2 octaves just to kind of fill it out. And overall with the second chord, I kind of did the same process, but didn't really do like the move it down trick. But I just kind of fiddle around with the middle note like I did here with the D sharp, and then kind of just wait till I get something that sounds like that dark distorted feeling. Then for the third chord, I just went ahead and duplicated the bass note up 2 octaves and then have it going up to B, which again, notes next to each other in the scale gives that dark feeling. And now here's like the unique-ish part of the melody. I've done this before in the last video I did that was similar to this, but I kind of just did it like really extra and spiced it up a lot. So if I pitch these up 2 octaves, you can see next to each other again, that dark feeling, but it goes down really quick and it kind of gives it like a reverse tape stop glide kind of thing. And then these little quick like reverse-ish chops really spice up the whole melody. And then it goes up to F and then F sharp and then back down to this F, which is really low. I think it's down 3 octaves, but overall it just gives it a really cool feeling. And that little section is pretty much it for the melody. I didn't add any variation because with these kind of melodies, you want to keep them dumb simple. You don't need any like super duper variation, just simple and sounding dark. So here's what this melody sounds like. Those little reverse slidey boys really do spice it up a lot. And then for the mixing on that, I just have Magic Switch, which is a free chorus plugin, low cut, and then an imager, not boosted all the way, but about halfway. All right, and then from the next sound from the same kit, of course, it's the Ecstasy lead, and this is the sound that you really get a lot of the melody's energy from, and overall it just sounds pretty cool. So as you can see, here's the MIDI. It is very simple, but it just copies those notes again next to each other in the scale, give it a more dark feeling. I'm going to say that like a million times in this video, but it just repeats this little arpeggio kind of thing, takes a break for a different lead that comes in, and then just continues to do that. And again, no variation in the second half or really at all. It just repeats this little bit over and over. So here's what this sounds like. Just adds energy and it's a nice little sound. And then for the mixing on that, all I have is Pancake on the Shy preset, LFO at 1 bar, just a real gentle sweep from ear to ear. All right, and then the next sound, apparently I just used that same lead over again, but a different pattern. Again, the Ecstasy lead from the Psycho kit, but it plays this pattern and I think it's up a higher octave than the other one. I don't know how I ended up using the same sound twice, but it sounds good in the long run. But it just repeats the same thing over and over again. And I'm not going to say it, but notes next to each other in the scale. Just got to stick with that and it'll sound good. But overall, very simple, using slide notes, which always sound really nice. So here's what this sounds like. So yeah, and then for the mixing on that, there's nothing on it. So yeah, and then when those two leads combine together, they do sound pretty cool. They're the same sound. I could have just did the MIDIs of them together, but I don't know why they're different. But here's what it sounds like. So just a nice little pattern. And then for the next sound, I used this bass slash lead called Yale. Again, same kit. but this is kind of that lead that you hear at like the start of all of these like whole lotta red type beats, like the low lead, but it just plays this D sharp at the end of every 2 bars. So again, there's not really much to explain. With these kind of melodies, I just kind of pick sounds and try to fit them in and make sure they kind of go together, but in these, it's not really that important to me. So here's what this pattern sounds like. It's one note, there's really not much to explain, and again, nothing on it on the mixer. So for the next sound, I went into Vital and grabbed this moving harmonics preset. It sounds really cool. It sounds like, I don't know, it sounds like machine failure, like metal, like clashing or something. At least to me, that's a weird way to describe it, but that's kind of what it sounds like. And then for the MIDI, again, just plays one note, very super simple, but again, D sharp, the root note of the whole melody, and just plays it at the start and then cuts off, keeps repeating. So again, not really much to explain, so here's what it sounds like. Kind of sounds cool. It's a nice little accent. It doesn't really stand out in the melody, but it does add something really nice to it. And then all I have on that on the mixer is just a low cut, because it does take up pretty much the whole EQ, but I want to leave room for an 808. And then finally, for the last melodic sound besides the bass, I use the futuristic trip pluck from that same Psycho one-shot kit. And this is basically what I do in those like dark synthy melodies for like an accent, but I'll just have it playing a super quick roll, and then I'll add supermassive on, so there's like a big delay and it just sounds really nice. And that's what I did on this, but it's a little roll, and then it of course goes back down into the slide notes because they just add something special and it sounds really nice into the melody. So here's what this sounds like. So just a nice little accent sound, kind of like where the lead isn't in, I guess. I don't really remember where I put this in the arrangement, but sounds pretty cool. And then for the effects on that, like I mentioned before, supermassive on the carousel preset, gross beat on the 1-beat gate, and then an EQ to cut out the lows. And then for the last sound in this melody, which is the bass, I grabbed it from the Money XO Bank. It's the blade type bass. This is one of my favorites for these kind of melodies, but here's the MIDI. It's a bass. It copies the bass notes really low. It sounds pretty cool. So yeah, here's what it sounds like. So yeah, it's a bass. There's really not much to explain. And then for the mixing on that, I just threw Fruity Fast Distort on it with it turned down to 13%. So it doesn't interfere that much, but it does add a little bit of distortion. And then this EQ to boost the low end and then cut out of the highs. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the melody. Overall, extremely simple. But then with the arrangement, again, just kept it really simple. And the only little like thing I added was a pause here where it's just that ecstasy lead, the one with the slides in it. It's pretty much soloed, and then there's an ambient sweep, so it gets like really reverby and then cuts off for where the drums would come in. And then I have this gross beat gradually fade in, and it's not the normal 1-beat gate I usually do, which is just crazy. But it is the slowdown gate, so it progressively gets slower. And it was a little bit too harsh just transitioning from the melody with no gate to the super duper gated part. So I went ahead and just faded it in, so it was a little bit more of a smooth transition. So yeah, and that's it for the entire melody and effects and everything. So here's what it sounds like, and then we can get started on the drums. So yeah, it's very fast paced, and I'm pretty sure, yeah, I pitched it down 1 in the end, so now we're in D minor. Pretty solid melody, so now we can get started on the drums. yeah, that's gonna be pretty much it for the video. I like the way the drums turned out. They're really fast. Low roll is pretty cool. I don't know, decent drums from someone that only does drums for videos. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Have a fantastic rest of your night. And here's the final beat.